Hi there, Jack here from Bridge Coffee Roasters. In today's video, we're going to be doing a comparison of the 4 different non-dairy milks that we supply to our customers, all of which are from the Alpro Barista range. So we're going to be looking at each of these 4 milks to see which might be the best for latte art and see if there's any kind of tips and tricks that might help you get some better results from your non-dairy milks. So all of these milks today are by Alpro, and we're starting off with their Almond from the Barista edition. Okay, so first attempt with the Almond. I'm going to start off with a small jug, and we're just going to try incorporating just a small amount of air. Maybe I'll try a little bit foamier on the next one. I got to temperature pretty quickly. You can still see some small bubbles. Okay, almond milk, attempt number 1. Bear in mind, I'm not any kind of latte art professional. Okay, so that's definitely way too thin. Absolutely terrible attempt at a tulip. So let's try something a little bit foamier for number 2. And add a bit more air this time. So I don't drink plant-based milks a whole lot myself. So probably a lot of it today will be going off what is most similar to dairy milk, which is definitely a flawed system, but I'm sure you'll be able to get decent results from all of these with a little bit of practice. Okay, so there's something slightly more closely resembling a tulip. Could have done with a bit more time injecting air again, maybe a little bit more foam. Let's see what I can do with a slightly bigger jug this time. So one tip that my friend Rob shared with me at one stage, specifically with the Oatly oat milk, was to steam it and then let it sit for about 20 seconds before you actually pour it into the coffee. So I'll try with a bigger jug, just standard, and then I'll try bigger jug, leave it to sit for 20 seconds and see if that gives any kind of better results. Looks pretty good, can't see any small bubbles there really. Nice consistency. Definitely a lot thicker. Okay, that's pretty nice. Still probably not up to par with my dairy tulips, to be quite honest, but I'll give it one more attempt and then move on to the next milk. This time I'm just going to use the standard jug that you get with a Sage machine. It's the one that I use at home, so I'm quite familiar with it. And I'm going to let it sit for about 15-20 seconds before I pour it into the espresso. Okay, it's been 20 seconds. Give it a few taps and a swirl. So with Almond, pretty impressed. I mean, I've only done 4 here and I'm already getting a relatively decent tulip. Definitely required a little bit more air than dairy milk. Letting it sit for a few seconds before going to pour, I think does help. Let's see if that holds true across the rest of the milks. So based on the testing with the Almond already, I'm gonna start off with a little bit more air in the milk than I would normally do with dairy. Just because I reckon that will give me a better result. Let's see what we can get. Coconut attempt number 1. Okay, so that's already pretty good, to be fair. Again, I'm not any kind of incredible coconut latte art champion, so don't expect massive things. But in terms of attempt number 1, that's pretty decent, I would say. Interestingly, pouring in the milk and setting it with the espresso base, that seemed very natural. That looked very much like it would with dairy. It was only till I then sort of poured in the actual pattern on the top that it started behaving differently. Yeah, let's try a smaller jug for round 2. Make sure you always clean and purge your steam wand. Okay, so smaller jug, looks a bit thinner this time. Let's see if that makes a difference. Again, very natural setting the base. Okay. So that felt, potentially that looks a bit too thin, but pouring the pattern there, that felt a lot more similar to dairy. Interesting. I feel like somewhere in the middle in terms of texture will be right on the spot. We'll say the coconut compared to the almond, it feels much nicer to steam for what that's worth. Okay, this definitely feels like we're somewhere in the middle in terms of texture. Let's see what we can get. Okay, push the base way too far out there. Okay, yeah. So it's not the prettiest, but that's definitely the best one so far, I reckon. Let's try one more time with coconut and leaving it again, like we did with the almond, for about 20 seconds before we go to steam. Looks quite a bit foamier, this one now, compared to the other three that we've done. Final attempt with the coconut. Okay, not quite as pretty as the previous one. So potentially with the coconut, you don't benefit too much from just leaving the milk alone for a few seconds before you pour. So I think probably the takeaway message at the end of this video is going to be just choose one and stick with it and experiment and practice, and you'll probably be able to get something decent out of all of these. Okay, so Alpro Barista Oat Edition, probably the one that I'm going to be the best with, to be honest. It says great in coffee. That's good news. I think this one is steamed too thin. Looks like it's separating a little bit just in the jug, not properly incorporated. Let's see what that looks like in the cup. Yeah. Definitely slightly too thin. But in terms of separation from the crema and, you know, delicate detail in the pattern there, pretty impressive for a first attempt. I'm just going to add a little bit more air to the milk for my second attempt. Okay, second one, maybe too much air this time. But still not too terrible. We've just lost a lot of the separation between the coffee and the crema that we had in the first one. That looks really nice. We've lost quite a lot of that in the second one. So again, just like we did with the coconut, probably somewhere in the middle of these two textures here will be decent result. Don't know if you can see that on camera, but quite a few bubbles. Texture's actually, after tapping it, looking pretty good. Yeah, okay. A little bit wonky with the cut through, but that's probably the best result that we've had so far. I mean, I wouldn't be disappointed if I received anything from what we've made today at a cafe. So for the last oat milk, we're gonna try that 20-second trick again, see if that helps out with letting some of the bubbles just burst and getting the texture nice and properly. Let's see. Not too bad, but I don't think we've necessarily gained anything there from waiting around 20 seconds. Probably number 3, still the best. I wouldn't be disappointed if I was served any of these in a cafe. Oat milk, kind of as I expected, so far has been my favorite. That might just be because of bias and because that's the one that I've used the most, but in terms of results, I think so far that has been my best. So last up on today's menu is the Alpro Soya Barista Edition. They've got a nice swan on the carton. Not sure if I'll be able to recreate that today. It's been a while since I've properly used soy on a day-to-day basis. Typically, it would always be the hardest one for me to steam and do latte art, but that is, you know, just experience and opinion. And just because I struggle with any of these doesn't mean that you might. I'm just going off of what feels most natural to me in terms of what feels most like dairy milk to steam, what comes easiest to me. Doesn't mean that you won't be able to get something decent out of all of these milks. Okay, very nice to incorporate. Okay, actually, pretty good. For me anyway, in terms of what I've typically been able to get from soya, that's not bad. Steamed it quite thin there. Let's see if adding just a little bit more texture and air can improve things. Slightly foamier, and we've lost a little bit of the definition around the base. Probably a better drinking experience off of this one in terms of texture. Let's see if I can recreate the swan on the packaging that they've got there. I'm not too sure. So they've got a 3-base tulip and then a swan. Yeah, not quite. I've definitely done worse, but it's not quite the same. All right, and one final attempt with soy. I'm just gonna go for a nice little rosetta. Okay, so not an amazing rosetta. We haven't got a huge amount of separation between the milk and the crema, and also the little feathers in the milk as well. Really not terrible though. I'm actually very surprised with soy. Okay, so in conclusion, I think you can get decent latte art out of all of these. Definitely my favorite was oat, and I kind of expected that going into it, but really surprised with soya as well. Really impressed. I got a kind of not terrible looking swan and rosetta and tulip. Pretty impressed with soy. That did surprise me quite a bit. Coconut, not my favorite. Still decent tulip, and the same with almond. I think the main takeaway from today is that no matter what non-dairy milk you choose, you can get decent latte art out of all of them, and it probably is just more about practice. I have used oat more than I have used every other one, and soy, it felt very similar to dairy in a lot of ways, just like the oat did. So if you need to choose one dairy milk, my recommendation would probably be oat, just in terms of latte art, but also in flavor as well. It's probably the least, not offensive, but it adds the least amount of flavor to your coffee, whereas something like almond and coconut, they're quite obvious that they're there. But definitely impressed with soy as well. If you want to be able to offer a wide range of non-dairy milks to your customers, I think these are all pretty safe bets. In terms of my favorite, probably oat again, but I think mainly it does just come down to practice as well. So I hope that was helpful. If you have any more questions about non-dairy milks, or you want some extra tips, then let us know in the comments down below. Subscribe to the channel and like the video if you enjoyed it, and I will see you in the next one.